So I think I just saw an amazing progress report regarding ICP, and that is how supposedly there was over 58,000 new canisters in February alone, meaning a 50% growth since July 2025. Now, this was a post made by the Dfinity Foundation. Even though nothing I say is financial advice, why do I find this to be pretty amazing? Well, it's because we have to consider this. Was ICP in terms of the charts doing better back in July of 2025 or in February? Of course, hands down, it's going to be better back in July of 2025. Actually, in July 2025, we saw around $6. As of right now, we're still below $3, and we're already in March. In February, it's not like ICP did anything too significant. It did not, right? So when people like to tell me, oh, ICP became worse. Well, in terms of the charts, okay, ever since July of 2025, I do agree with that. But in terms of the fundamentals, I don't really think so, because just imagine, over 58,000 new canisters in February alone. Just in February, a 50% growth, again, ever since July 2025. That's pretty impressive. So when people like to tell me, oh, again, ICP's cooked, I don't really agree with that. I think if anything, it's just maybe starting in terms of the meal, right? I don't think it's fully cooked in that sense. But yeah, besides that point though, when I take a look at ICP as well, people like to tell me, well, other projects have done like a 30% recovery, 20%, 10%, or whatever. ICP hasn't really done much. They like to say, okay, take a look at it in the past week alone. It was just like not even a 7% recovery. Other projects have done more. Okay, I'm totally aware of that, but we have to consider, first of all, as of right now, the sentiment when it comes to altcoins hasn't really kicked back in yet in a massive way. And we've seen some individual cases out there where projects kind of like outperformed ICP in just like the past week or something like that. But we have to consider sometimes that different projects, they recover at different times. It's not like every single project is just going to automatically all, have this coordinated moment where everything does exactly the same. I don't feel like that is always going to be the case, in my opinion. Like, sure, some other projects may kind of go up first, and then some other projects maybe sometimes they lag behind or they do it at later times. It's not all just like automatic, right? Sometimes that's the way you take a look at it. Now, if the sentiment became better overall, of course, sure, we would probably see, a general change in sentiment, but it doesn't mean that every single project is just going to move at the exact same rate as the other, in my opinion, in terms of percentage increase. And ICP is pretty massive, right? I mean, a significant movement sometimes is kind of difficult for a project this massive. ICP by no means is the biggest. No, it's not. But it's currently ranked 47th in the world in terms of market cap. So it's not that bad. I mean, it's hovering around 1.5 billion in terms of market cap. So it's not a small project by any means. Even with the major pullback we've seen, generally speaking, ever since 2025, ICP is still pretty massive in terms of market cap. It's kind of difficult sometimes to kind of have a project like this really move in any significant way if there isn't like a large volume. So to me, I'm going to be waiting because in this space, from my experience, what I feel like the only thing I can control is myself, right? This space is going to move with or without me. It's going to move at its own pace. I have no input. I can't do anything about it. But as long as I like the fundamentals, as long as I like the community, and as long as I like where the project seems to be heading fundamentally, I just don't want to give up. And here's the thing. ICP being below $3 right now, I don't think is inherently such a bad thing for me either in terms of dollar cost averaging. Now, the reason why is because due to ICP being below $3, it's actually over 3 times lower than $9, right? In which case, because I'm looking again to accumulate to dollar cost average, in theory, the lower something is, the happier I'd maybe be in some cases for dollar cost averaging reasons. Now, would I complain though if ICP had a recovery? No, I would not. But imagine if ICP as of right now was like at around $6. Okay, that'd be pretty cool in terms of the sentiment overall when it comes to ICP. But for dollar cost averaging reasons, I'd be happier at below $3. But again, of course, I don't want it to be that way forever, but I'm just saying, with the situation that I'm seeing, I sometimes feel like I have to make the best of it, right? If let's say my intent is the dollar cost average and I see something low, I'm not going to complain. But if there was a recovery, I'm not going to complain either. But the way I take a look at it is with both sides, like with both situations, there's always a positive that I could take a look at personally in my perspective, even though I am not telling anyone to do anything. But it's like, for instance, some of my friends out there, they were pretty happy, right? Seeing, Bitcoin have a pullback, Ethereum and all this. They were pretty happy seeing that. But now with the slight recovery, they're also happy. The reason why is because when things had a dip, they were happy for dollar cost averaging. But when things recovered, they were happy because the sentiment changed. So really, I feel like there's two sides to this, even though this is just my perspective. So I don't complain either way. This is my mindset. And again, my intent isn't to like leave in a week or something like that. That's not my goal. My intent is to treat it like a marathon. So if I have to wait for quite a while, I feel like I'll be waiting anyways. I'm still gonna have to live my life either way, whether I'm holding or I'm not. So sometimes I like to be holding as opposed to not holding. However, even besides that, there's other things as well that, ICP has kind of showcased, right? I mean, if we think about it, there was 10 times chain key signing throughput increase, which supposedly they say unlocks faster cross-chain operations. So again, there's been some updates lately when it comes to ICP, in my opinion, that have proven to be a pretty cool thing, I think, for it fundamentally, in terms of, I think, adding towards its prestige, right? Adding towards its kind of fundamental accomplishments. People sometimes like to tell me no one cares about this. However, eventually, sometimes people do care later on, in my opinion. It's like, for instance, the Santa Cruz bicycle. Is every single one of my friends out there going to be able to appreciate the quality, the craftsmanship, and all this? Probably not, right? Some of my friends out there, they're just not into mountain bikes. I'm talking about like a bicycle. But some of my friends out there that do see the quality, that do see, the design and kind of the thought put into it, they could appreciate that, right? And I feel like if, let's say, I relate it to this space, when it comes to something like ICP, sure, because the charts are kind of still low, this type of stuff that I mentioned before, like, in terms of the canisters and also in terms of the chain key signing, stuff like that, right? That type of stuff may not be such a big topic right now, but if the sentiment were to change, sometimes people take a look back at stuff like this. So I don't think it's a bad thing whatsoever, personally, in my perspective. During an altcoin season, sometimes hypothetically, people do care about this type of stuff. They kind of take a look back at, what the project has kind of accomplished historically. So I don't think this is a bad thing overall. And really, this is to the point that ICP, because it's below $3, if ICP never sees like $15, $20 or whatever, if it just goes back to like $9, I'm already kind of like pretty, I guess, happy enough to really just go to Sizzler. That's my point of view, because it's just to the point that if ICP is below $3, if it goes back to $9, again, that's already like kind of hypothetically a going to Olive Garden type of moment for me. It's like, for instance, Bitcoin is not over 3 times lower than even its all-time high. And $9 is not ICP's all-time high. We literally saw, by the way, right? ICP at around $9 back in November of 2025. Again, November. That's not even half a year ago. Because we're so low, if it goes back to that point, like, I don't even need an altcoin season at that moment. Like, if it could just go back there, like anything like dollar cost average here, if it just goes back there, again, I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but I'm just saying, had ICP only had a pullback to like $6, then going to $9, okay, it's kind of boring, right? But because it's below $3, literally, and keep in mind, we kind of, not that long ago, we saw a new all-time low when it comes to ICP, which was like, if we think about it, I'm going to check this real quick, right? Around $1.98. So it was actually below $2 as all-time low. We saw that not too long ago. Again, it's because it's had a pullback so extensive, generally speaking, like even as of right now, it's still below $3, right? To the point that if it could just return back to a point it's reached before, I'm not going to complain at all. I'm not going to be upset, because some people like to tell me, oh, what happens if there's no altcoin season? My response is, okay, sure. If there isn't one, if let's say things could only just go back to where they were once was not too long ago, I don't even need an altcoin season at that point, just because ICP's had such a major pullback. It's like, for instance, again, ICP's below $3, goes back to $9. I don't even need an altcoin season at that moment, in my opinion. Now, of course, I'd be happier if there was an altcoin season, but it's dipped to a point which is kind of, relatively speaking, pretty low, to the extent that if it just goes back to a point it's reached before, I'm already really happy actually. But even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything, I'm just still dollar cost averaging once a month, and that's it. I don't want to give up. But I'm still waiting, and I do like the slight recovery that we're seeing as of right now. However, I'll be sure to make more updates when it comes to ICP. But nonetheless, I'm just still waiting. That's the way to take a look at it. However, I want to say thank you for watching. I hope you all have a very nice day. It's Malik the Captain, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.